Alright guys, before we get into our reaction video, we just want to say that our thoughts and prayers are still with everyone in Nashville who has been affected by the explosion. I don't know, just the bomb. We don't know exactly what happened, but just the explosion that happened up in Nashville on, I believe it was 2nd Avenue. Is that right? Just thoughts and prayers with, all of Nashville, especially the people whose businesses or just whatever they had going on that street was affected by this bombing.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Titans Time Podcast. We're bringing you guys our thoughts and reaction to the Titans' 40-14 loss to the Green Bay Packers on Sunday Night Football. We're talking Packers having no penalties called on them the whole game. We're talking Davante Adams, Derrick Henry, all of the things from the game. We're talking terrible offsides call. All the things, we're bringing you our thoughts and reaction on it. Let's get into it. Okay, but just right off the bat, one thing that has to be mentioned. How many times has an NFL team went through a game and not had a single penalty called on them? I mean, I'm sure it's happened before. I'm sure it's probably happened a good number of times.
Yeah, but I mean...
But it's not necessarily often that happens.
How often do you see a team play a perfect game?
Well, by no means was it a perfect game. Now, let me be clear. The Titans did not play well. Even if it was called fairly, probably still would not have won, but they would not have been blown out.
They would have had a lot better chance. And for anyone watching this, especially Packers fans, look, we want to say, congrats. Your team showed up, and they did win. They made more plays than the Titans did.
Aaron Rodgers won the MVP last night.
It's looking like it. I mean, still me being biased, I'd like to see Derrick Henry come out, just absolutely destroy the Texans, put up just a hell of a game like nothing we've ever seen before, and clinch MVP. But like you said, Aaron Rodgers, he played really well last night. And, the Titans, for the most part, it looked like a lot of them just weren't in the right mindset for this game. Well, I mean, if you ask me, like, for me, the two people that showed up and just played their game, like weren't really affected by the conditions, anything like that, were on the offensive side, Derrick Henry, and I'll get into that and plead my case a little bit more there. But Derrick Henry on the offensive side, and on the defensive side, David Long Jr.
Yeah, he played good.
And like I said, I'll dive into those a little bit more. The reason I say Derrick Henry showed up is because, I mean, he was doing what he was asked to do. He had 23 carries for 98 yards, averaged like 4.3 yards per carry. And the thing was, he was getting hit in the backfield or having to make that extra cut in the snow in the backfield a whole lot this game. Our line did not look good, whether it be in run blocking, pass blocking, whatever. We had guys maybe slipping around a little bit. But then you go to our pass game, and it was like our receivers were afraid to actually put their foot in the ground and make cuts on their routes.
Well, they're not used to playing in the snow. I think the weather had a really big effect on the game.
And then going to the defensive side, talking about David Long Jr., for the most part, it looked like a lot of our defensive guys didn't want to drive on anyone and hit them. They would just sit back and let the Packers come to them. And especially when you have, big A.J. Dillon back there, who, I mean, he's a powerhouse back. And when you're letting him come to you and hit you instead of you going and hitting him, he's going to run right over you. I mean, you're not going to arm tackle this guy. And it seems like the Titans, this year have been pretty good about giving up big games to people that haven't been necessarily as relevant this season. But David Long Jr., whenever he decided he was going to shoot on something, he was going full speed, just no caution to the wind, and hitting somebody.
Yeah, he played a really good game.
He was driving on people.
Yeah. He played a really good game. Now, the rest of the defense, honestly, there may have been, a guy here or there that, made some decent plays. But overall, the rest of the defense played pretty poorly. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's not a new thing. The defense has been playing terrible all season. They've had a game here or there. Some guys have had a play here or there. But that's just how this Titans defense has been. Now, the offensive line, very uncharacteristic performance. They played absolutely terrible. There's no excuse for it. The snow, maybe. There is excuses for it, but I mean, they don't. The excuses don't completely make up for just how bad they played. I mean, Ryan Tannehill played a bad game. The wide receivers played a bad game. Offensive line played a bad game. I agree with you, Derrick Henry. He played a decent game. The one thing that he had going against him is they were down the whole game.
Right, and that's why I'm saying, I mean, you think about it, them being down, he still had 23 carries for 98 yards. I mean, they were down 19-0 in the first half. Scored right before halftime, got the ball to start the second half, come out, scored again, in a 5-point game. And if they were able to get a stop there, you're probably going to see a lot more Derrick Henry.
Absolutely.
In the game. But Packers were able to go down and score. Titans didn't get anything going. Packers score again, and eventually, like you said, this game's out of reach. And, I mean, the starters did play on into the fourth quarter, and then when it was finally, towards the end of the game, when it was out of reach, you seen the backups come in because you don't want to risk anyone getting hurt, especially with the important game we have coming up this next week.
That's right.
But I'm glad you touched on Tannehill. He didn't have his best game. He had some moments.
Flashes. He did. He had flashes.
Even that 45-yard touchdown run, it was like the defense was just kind of, you have the Derrick Henry effect, as people are calling it, and I mean, rightfully so.
Yeah.
He faked the handoff, and normally this is a play we see down near the goal line.
Right.
He fakes the handoff, pulls it, and he runs it in.
Absolutely turned on the wheels. I mean, if there's any play out of this whole game, if you wanted to make Ryan Tannehill look like he played a good game,
show this play.
You take that play, and then also probably take the Jonnu touchdown.
Right.
And you take those two plays, show them to somebody, and they're like, hey, maybe Ryan Tannehill played a good game. I mean, obviously you can't just take two plays and say that. But the rest of the game for Ryan Tannehill was below average.
Right. But also, you have to play complementary football. And that's the big thing right now, especially in this game. Since it's fresh on our minds, the Titans didn't do that. Yes, Tannehill had a bad game, but that can also go back to look at how many times he had pressure in his face.
Absolutely.
And, maybe, yes, he rushed some things, made some wrong reads. Probably could have had a couple more interceptions than what he did have. And luckily, guys dropped the balls. But, it wasn't a good all-around game at all for the Titans. And, that's what I was wanting to get back to from earlier. Yes, the refs, did they make some bad calls and miss probably quite a few calls? Yes. I mean, it happens.
Hey, listen. Now, I don't want to just completely just brush over the officiating thing and not say any more on it. Because some of the bad calls or missed calls that they made were absolutely egregious and need an explanation.
Right, and I wasn't saying just sweep them under the rug, anything like that, because
it's not an excuse for the way that the Titans played.
Even though you're talking about the Packers possibly getting 14 points or so off of those bad calls, I mean, you take 14 points away and the Titans are still losing, but what it comes down to is when those penalties were called, I mean, the Titans had the momentum. There would have been a big momentum swing, and yes, even if you take 14 points off the score, the Titans are still losing. But that momentum, you don't know what could happen.
Exactly.
I mean, the Titans could go down the field, score again.
Well, you have the illegal hands to the face early, which was not a bad call. Not a bad call. It was a good call. Stupid play by Rashaan Evans.
It was.
Completely flipped the whole I mean, the Titans had a stop. They were about to get the ball back. I mean, with the momentum, probably would have went down and scored. I mean, Derrick Henry, that could have been a very key drive in getting Derrick Henry going.
I believe that happened when the Packers were only up 6-0.
Right.
And they stopped them. That penalty got called. Packers went right down the field and scored.
Mike Vrabel even kind of said it right after halftime. Look, you can't make those stupid mistakes.
Right, don't do dumb things.
Rashaan Evans has done that several times this season where he's put the team in a bad position with penalties, and there's absolutely no excuse for it. He's played great when, on the, in goal line defense, and I mean, he's made some good stops against the run, but the guy has had a step down from the way that he played last season, and he's been making bonehead plays and just, having really bad penalties.
Yes.
Honestly, with the way that David Long has been playing, you could make a case that after the season you make a move to get rid of Rashaan Evans.
But here's what you're having to look at. They could still have Evans under contract, whereas Jayon Brown's coming up for a new contract. And he's played well enough that, depending on his asking price, he could walk if he wants to. So, you have, and that's where we would need David Long to fill in.
I think David Long could fill in as a starter in the NFL and be a good linebacker.
And he at least has a couple more years on his contract. But yes, he played really good against the Packers. Now, jump into another call that, it was a bad call, but in the ultimate,
in the grand scheme of things,
right? In the grand scheme of things, it didn't change much because the Titans were still able to get a stop on 4th down.
Right.
But the blocked field goal. I mean, even when you have the head, I'm trying to think of what they call him. The guy that they bring in asking about penalties.
Right. The rules analyst.
Right, the rules analyst. You bring him in, and even he makes the comment of, okay, now things are getting way too technical, and if you look on both sides of that football, no one is offsides. I mean, that just something is wrong there.
Phone calls are being made to NBC like, listen, get this guy off of the TV right now. Stop calling out the refs on national television.
But
stop.
That still was a big kind of momentum swing because the Titans pick it up and carry it like 50 yards the other way.
Now, let me explain. Let me make a case to why that call actually benefited the Titans.
Okay.
So, I don't know exactly how much time was left when that happened, but obviously they took it a good chunk down the field.
I get where you're going with this.
Like you said, they took it a good chunk down the field. Now, they got the ball where? Roughly maybe 20, 30-yard line after the 4th down failed?
Somewhere around in there.
They maybe would have had it at the Packers, maybe, how far did they take it? I can't exactly remember. Maybe the Packers' 20, 30-yard line?
I think it would have been inside the 20, probably.
But in their territory, at least.
Right. Yeah, I can't remember exactly how far.
So,
the snow being on the field kind of
it was hard to tell. Now, it would have taken them a lot less time, most likely, to score in that situation. They took the time off the clock, still scored. I say if the offsides was not called, the Titans probably would have scored and left the Packers enough time to score before halftime. I think it worked out in their favor. Still, offsides was a shit call.
Right, and that's why I want to say in the grand scheme of things, it didn't really make that much of a difference because
helped.
The Titans. Now, if the Titans hadn't have got the stop,
it could be completely different.
Then it would have been terrible.
So one last call that we got to talk about.
Oh, there's 2 more in my mind.
Okay, well, what I'd like to talk about is not necessarily a call, but a missed call, and I think I know where you're going after we talk about this. But Aaron Jones steps out of bounds, runs 40 more yards, I mean, there's a picture. The official, you can see his hat is facing right at where Aaron Jones stepped out of bounds.
Right at it.
He's looking
and
right
people,
at it.
People want to make the comment, oh, well, you know, it was snowing, his shoes are white, the sideline's white. Like, no,
Dude,
you can clearly see his foot is out of bounds.
You can tell. And there wasn't snow. There was a space. I'm going to try to get it to where the camera can see it. This wide, where there was no snow between there and the sideline. So it was obvious that he was out of bounds. So, I mean, if that call gets made, obviously should have been challenged, but the Packers did a good job of getting up there and getting it snapped.
Right, and I think Vrabel said that he didn't even, see the first replay of it.
Well, and it was on the opposite sideline. So,
right.
I mean, you do cut him a little slack there because it wasn't on his sideline. But
either way,
should have been called.
The Titans have to be better about getting the word down to Vrabel.
Right.
Hey, you need to throw this. I mean,
the guys on the sideline, or the guy that was there to tackle him, I believe it was Adoree Jackson, should have immediately looked at Vrabel, and Adoree had to have known that he went out of bounds.
Well, even then,
he slowed up like he knew.
Right, but even then, you always hear you don't give up on a play until you hear the whistle.
That's right. Yeah.
And I mean, I guess because you can get the late hit called, everything else, if you hit them when they run out of bounds. But you have to make sure that they actually go out of bounds. You can't just assume, okay, I've pushed him, he's gonna no, these are professional athletes.
Aaron Jones is a lot bigger than Adoree Jackson.
And I know Alvin Kamara is not on the Packers, but you look at his work.
That's a fact.
You look at his workouts that he does for balance and everything else. These guys can recover pretty quick and get their feet back up and under them. So, but yes, that was a big missed call. Should have been challenged. Didn't get the call down in time to say, hey, challenge it. Packers done a good job of getting down there.
So let's
snapping the ball.
I'd like to hear what's the call.
And I actually thought of something else. We've seen a couple times, watching the game, where you could clearly see a Packers lineman with a false start. We've seen that one time for sure, we know. And you're going to tell me they went the whole game without holding? I mean, everyone pretty much knows there's holding on every play. Yeah. It's just how technical do the refs want to get.
And if you're going to call technical enough to call an offsides where there's not even an offsides, surely you're going to call technical enough to call a holding penalty.
I mean, I even pointed it out to you one time on a run play that the Packers done where their lineman, I can't remember which Titans player it was.
Well, regardless.
But he had him on one side at his shoulder pad, and with his other arm, he was wrapped around his helmet to the back side of his jersey holding him. You're telling, I thought you were supposed to stay right here. But the play I wanted to talk about was one of the Titans' punts. Again, I've only seen one angle of this. I haven't got to see a different camera view to see if he actually touched it or not.
Right.
But when we were watching the game, it really looked like a Packers player touched the ball on a punt, which would have made it a live ball, and the Titans clearly grabbed it, and it was called down right there. But it really looked like that Packers player touched the ball. And nothing was even said about it.
Right. On Twitter, I saw several people talking about it. I'm still on the side that, the angle kind of made it appear like something it was not.
Right, but that's why I would have loved to have seen a different camera angle just to see.
Right.
Because, for me watching the game and watching that replay, I've watched it several times. They always talk about how, even if you go into basketball and they're reviewing who it's out on or if a player touched it before it went out, they look at the trajectory of the ball to see if anything changed about it. And to me, I thought it looked like when that ball hit, it was going to bounce out of bounds. But it stayed in. So it was almost like something changed there. But, again, that's just speculation without seeing a different camera. I'm not saying for sure that he touched it. I'm just saying that it looked like he touched it.
And one thing, like football is like, it's just funny to me that it's like not even close to being as technical as basketball is. Like in basketball, there will be replays to see, okay, is this guy's foot at all touching the three-point line?
Right.
At any point. And then, like you said, there's replays. Did the trajectory of the ball change? In football, it's like, okay, here's the first down line. There's literally a pile of guys, and you don't see where the ball is, and the ref just runs up, and he's like, fuck it, it's right here.
Right.
And it's like,
and maybe
it's so not technical
maybe trajectory isn't the best word for us. They'll see if the spin,
well, if the path of the ball, anything,
right.
I mean, you explained it, correctly. But it's just funny to me. It's just like in football, it's not even close to being as technical as things are in basketball. And it's just,
as far as calls go from
right.
the refs.
Right.
But, when it comes down to it, and I even watched a replay today, and I want to get off the refs here.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to make that point.
Davante Adams, one of his last touchdowns where it looked like he just stopped on a dime and Malcolm Butler slid on past. Watching a little bit different replay and camera angle, Davante Adams may have had a hand on the back of Butler to just kind of influence him a little bit.
Yeah, but my thing with that is that happens all the time.
Right. And
that happens all the time.
Again, when it comes down to it, the Titans just didn't play their best game.
No, they did not.
I mean, if we would have seen this Titans offense come out and do what they've done the last couple of weeks, we would have been playing right there with the Packers. Stops or not, our offense would have been scoring with them. And that's what we were missing and what we've relied on so much this year is our offense, making plays and just putting up points. And when our offense is putting up points and we get a little bit of a lead, it almost seems to energize our defense a little bit more or make them be more aggressive. And it changes things for them. But
so let's talk about, we've almost said what we can say about this game. One more thing that I would throw out is that, like, Davante Adams in the snow is, like, on a different level than any other player in the snow.
And
you got to give him props for that.
Right. I want to tie this back to the Titans receivers as well. Davante Adams, his cuts, his footwork, everything. I know they kept talking about it last night, but the guy's footwork for a receiver,
ridiculous.
It is crazy. He doesn't even use his hands that much to get off the line of scrimmage. It's all footwork. He was not afraid to plant and make his cuts.
I said it last night, and I'll say it again. I know it kind of sounds like I'm just, hopping on the Packers for, 30 minutes or however long this video is going to be. But Aaron Rodgers obviously won the MVP last night. Davante Adams solidified himself, if he didn't already. He already had in my mind, but if he didn't in anyone else's mind, solidified himself as the best wide receiver in the NFL.
Man,
dude, he's the best. He's the best.
That'll be a little bit controversial for people, but I can definitely see your argument.
Well, people are just going to have to get over it because he showed last night. And he's been showing it all year. Over the past, I think since 2016, he's got 10 more touchdowns than any of the other receivers.
I'll say this. I will definitely give you that he probably has the best footwork.
Oh, for sure.
His route running, I'd say he's probably the best route runner in the league.
Best wide receiver. So let's talk about the Titans' future here for a moment because, I think I can't remember exactly what the website was, but one of the playoff predictors, they have a 94% chance of making the playoffs. And I believe I actually heard that on Part of My Take, but that was from one of the playoff predictors. So a 94% chance. Obviously, that goes probably way down if they lose to the Texans. But I think that they have a really good chance of winning. But how far can this team make it into the playoffs if they don't make some sort of change defensively? And where I'm going with this is to the fact that they need a pass rush. They couldn't get to Aaron Rodgers at all. So, I mean, that's something that needs to be addressed is the pass rush. There's a guy out there that, from, reports I've seen, now obviously I'm not saying I have any kind of insider information or anything. This is just reports that I've seen from people who have, hearsay or whatever. The guy's in good shape. I mean, he might be a little bit old, on the older side. But Clay Matthews is out there. And there has to be something done with the pass rush because I don't know. I mean,
he can't make our pass rush any worse.
The Titans whiffed on 2 offseason acquisitions, Clowney and Vic Beasley. I mean, regardless of injury or whatever, they whiffed. Those guys have brought nothing to the team. And, obviously they're both gone now. I mean, Clowney's on IR or whatever. But they got to do something because the Landry, Roberson, and whomever else, it's not getting it done. Something has to change. I think if they can get a pass rush, the defense can go from terrible to just bad.
I could see that. For me, I just, it's kind of funny. We've had this happen for, the past couple years. We finally break the 9-7 curse this year. But it still comes down to you have to win the last game of the season to get
in. And in most cases, you got to beat the Texans. Got to beat the Texans.
You have to beat the Texans. You need this team to lose or this team to lose. It doesn't.
If they beat the Texans,
right.
it's all good.
That's what I was about to get to. If you don't beat the Texans, you have to have this and this happen. But if you win, you're in. And it's just one of those things where it's like, okay, we checked off the get past 9-7.
Right.
Now we need to, next thing on the list, that we'd like to see this year is win a Super Bowl.
Right.
But, you have to think after that or after this season going on into the future, it's going to be get past 9-7, clinch a playoff spot before the final week.
Right.
I mean, but as far
as the reason they have such a good chance to make the playoffs is because even if they lose, they need either there's 3 different teams. They need either this team
Miami
or this team
lose.
or this team to
Right.
lose. Several different ways that they can still get into the playoffs. And obviously, best case scenario, the Jags beat the Colts.
They've done it once this year. I don't see it happening again.
Well, I say they just go in there with the absolute mindset of let the Colts just kick the shit out of us this game and let's get out of here and get Trevor Lawrence. I mean, that's what you've got to be looking forward to if you're in any way affiliated with the Jags. I don't see any way that they win the game, but that is best case scenario.
I mean, it is because
then it doesn't matter.
Exactly. And, this game versus Green Bay, we've talked about it, hit on everything.
It's just a bad game.
It was a bad game.
All around. Refs, Titans, I mean.
Only thing we can look forward to is this year the Titans, for the most part, have shown if they get their ass kicked, they come back the next week firing on all cylinders. And, we're on to the Texans now. This game's behind us. Obviously we needed to react to this game, get our thoughts out there, everything. And that's really all I have for it.
The one thing that I have to say is that if the Titans, and you can tell me whether or not you agree with this or not, but if the Titans don't fix their pass rush, I'm not saying they have to add somebody. It would obviously help, but something's got to happen. I don't know if it's some sort of scheme adjustment or, if you got to start just doing something differently. Adding a guy would help. Clay Matthews is out there, go get him. But if something doesn't change with the pass rush, then you're not beating the Chiefs. You're not beating the Bills. Hell, you're not beating the Ravens again.
Well, and I made this point to you earlier today. Grant, the defense has to be fixed. Something has to be done. But going into the playoffs, crazy things can happen. And, I mean, really, as far as making a deep playoff run, it may come down to who you get matched up against in each round.
And, that's... I feel like that's always the case. But with the Titans this year, it's going to be so crucial. Because I think if they get matched up with the Steelers in round 1, that is a huge bonus. Even though the Steelers have already beat them this season. A huge bonus.
And even though the Steelers come back on the Colts yesterday,
I don't have any faith in the Steelers right now.
That they are not the same. They are not as good as people thought they were.
I don't know if the Dolphins can still make. Well, even if the Dolphins did make the playoffs, they'd probably be playing the Chiefs or somebody. So that
Chiefs have that first round bye. So,
or well, whoever's going to be the second seed.
It's down to Buffalo or the Steelers.
Right. So they'd be playing either one of those because they would probably sneak in with like the last seed, 7th seed. But I mean, regardless, not beating the Chiefs, not beating the Bills. Probably not beating the Ravens again just because of the sheer fact that, 1, no pass rush, and 2, can't stop the run either. Well, they're sure as hell not beating the Packers again, or not again, but just if you play them again, the Saints or the Seahawks. So,
well, I like to be a little bit more optimistic than you are. I believe, if they, main focus, get into the playoffs. And then go from there. I think that they can make something happen.
Just get in there and see what happens. Because in any game, I mean,
any given Sunday,
we saw the Chiefs come out flat,
right?
But
if our offense is clicking on all cylinders, we've said this before, they can put up points with any team,
right?
And that may be what we have to rely on.
But it would just be so hard for me to watch another game against the Chiefs in which you just can't get to Patrick Mahomes, and that's what kills you.
Again, though, we're looking way too far ahead right now.
No, man, it's time to start. It's time to start talking about the playoffs.
Look, I know you're wanting to talk about the playoffs, but the thing is, we have to get in the playoffs first.
94%.
You can't.
94%.
Yeah, 94% isn't 100%. They don't have it wrapped up yet. What I'm saying is, right now, our focus has to be on the Texans.
I mean, we're going to focus on the Texans in the game preview on the podcast.
I'm telling you, I don't like to look too far ahead. That's where my mindset is right now.
There's so many possible things, possible ways.
So
I think
my mind is,
regardless of what happens against the Texans, I think there's a very good chance that the Titans get into the playoffs.
And, hopefully that is the case because we want to see this team at least have a chance at another deep playoff run or the Super Bowl.
I think, I can't exactly remember when all the games are, but I think depending on if one of those teams that they need to loses early, they might already know going in that they've at least clinched the playoffs and they'll just be playing for the AFC South.
Right, and we want the AFC South.
Right, absolutely.
I mean,
100%.
We want to have that home playoff game.
100%. So all in all, bad game. But hey, we'll be making our game preview for the Texans. Just moving on. Forget the Packers game. Moving on. Make sure that you're tuning in to the podcast to see the game previews. I mean, we're bringing it every game, and we'll even have content on there even when the season is over. So make sure you're checking it out. All the podcast apps are going to pop up. It's Titans Time. Search us on any of those apps. Subscribe, whatever. Leave 5 stars, all of that good stuff. Also, make sure that you're following us on social media and, liking, retweeting, sharing, all that good stuff. The ones that we're the most active on, Twitter is Titans_time, and Facebook is Titans Time. We're also on Instagram, Titans Time Podcast, and we have our website, titanstimepodcast.com.
Guys, if you haven't already, make sure you go down and hit that subscribe button. We're trying to hit 200 subscribers before the end of the year. We're at like 173 right now. We're close, but at the same time, the end of the year is coming up just in a couple days.
We need to make a push here.
Yeah, we need a push. We would really appreciate it if you could help us hit that 200 mark.
Go out on Twitter. Tell people to subscribe to the Titans Time Podcast on
Share
YouTube.
the video with family, friends, just anyone. Make sure you like the video.
Anyone that'll watch us.
And comment on the video. We love the interaction. Love going back and forth with people. And we want to hear your thoughts on this game. And, I know most Titans fans we're all on to the Texans now.
Dude, as soon as we leave this room, I'm completely forget about this game. It's out of my mind after that. So, with that being said, this has been Titans Time, and as always, Titan up.